Welcome to a tutorial for Natural Selection 2 players who want to learn how to command as the alien commander. The purpose of this tutorial is to walk through steps at acquiring 2 hive scenario and the reasons why you would choose certain steps and evolutions to get there. Now, I've already made a tutorial video covering the different technologies and structures and evolutions that aliens have. This is actually meant to take it a step further and explain the steps at doing it, and if you were to actually walk through in the beginning of a game leading up to at least a 2 hive setup. So we're actually going to pretend in explore mode that we've just started a game, and what's the first thing that you want to do as a commander? So right now I just jumped in the hive. My skulks are sending off across the map, and they just happen to get here, and first contact is in ventilation. In the meanwhile, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to send out a drifter to crossroads. This is my step 1. That way I know for sure that if they get to crossroads, I'll be aware of it. I may actually also, if possible, knowing that my skulks have reported that their base is sub-access, I'm also going to send out a drifter right away to ventilation. Now, these drifters are going out really fast. Knowing that it's sub-access, I'm going to... Oops, I sent out another one on accident. Knowing that it's sub-access, I'm actually going to build cysts moving towards reactor in the meanwhile. I sent out too many drifters, but I'm going to take one of these that I have, and I'm going to move him over here. Now, I might put this drifter here. I might actually put him here. I might even put him in the corner over here, just to be aware of when Marines start pushing in this direction. Drifters, I think, are so important to people that newer comms don't realize how important they are. Now, obviously, if they're in sub and they're trying to assault in this direction, they're also going to want to capture res in computer lab. If I can get a drifter all the way into computer lab, that's great, because then I'll be aware of when they're there. If I can't get them all the way into computer lab, I'll put a drifter over in flight control somewhere, kind of out of the way, maybe over here by this post. But I'm not going to go too far down the road with drifters here. I just wanted to cover basic importance that drifters are probably one of the first things that you should do right away. And while your drifters are moving out, and while you're building those drifters, go ahead and expand. So I'm expanding out to reactor. Now, obviously in explore mode, I got massive amount of res, and so I'm just basically going through it as if I didn't have any res. And every time I'm clicking, I'm dropping the amount of res that I have and losing res very fast. So I want to make sure that before I do anything crazy, like a 2 hive drop is not my favorite thing to do. It has its flaws, and so typically will go and expand my res flow all the way up to the next nearby tech point or hive drop location. Knowing that they're here, it does make sense to go all the way in the opposite direction to atrium and hope that you can hold it. Boom, I've dropped that. We have one already going. Now, you may have heard from different people that 3 extractors for aliens is enough to do some damage, and it is. You could stop at 3 and still win a game. But if you can, 4 is really good. Now, if you have a more noobish team that you're playing against, no derogatory intentions here, but you may want to sneak into crossroads if you can, and that sets you up for a 4th extractor. And wait, and there we go. Now, this may be a sacrificial lamb here. That's okay. It's meant as kind of a distraction, and you'll get an idea for, oh, okay, they just put it into crossroads. Now I know how good they are. If they've left the crossroads alone for a really long time, you may actually want to, in the process, cyst up in here to drop a shift in a little bit later. So at this moment in time, chaos is going on, skulks and marines are fighting, but you should be able to get to this point where you have 3 or 4 extractors, drifters on the field, and you haven't evolved your hive yet. Because evolving the hive doesn't take very much time. It's just a matter of choice and when to do it. So we're going to cover using a shift hive. So I'm going to evolve my shift hive. At this point, the players are potentially begging for upgrades and there's a big fight going on. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to, after we get our upgrades, that's the first thing. At this point in time, you're probably struggling for res because your extractors were just dropped. They're actually not fully built yet. They're just pulling in res. So you're just kind of hanging tight, helping your players. And in some cases, you may be in trouble. So do you go, if you have the res to go for a spur and get celerity, that's what you want to do. But the problem is you may get a lot of action going on here in nearby hive from marines assaulting you. So you may need an alternative. Now that you have a shift hive, you have a choice. You can put a shift here in crossroads, for example, or you can also put a shift, and I think this is a good idea regardless, is putting a shift just as a backup in your next potential hive drop. So we'll do that. I know it's probably a better idea to put one in here, but let's assume that you didn't make it out here and we're trying to play safe. By playing safe, the next potential hive drop will put a shift in here, and if we start getting too much flak in here, we can then come up here to atrium and start spawning eggs safely for them to come and rescue, from the assault. So now we're in a pretty good position, playing it safe. What's next? We've got a shift hive. We're going to drop a spur. Now, spurs are vulnerable. A lot of times marines want to run in and just kill them. You may actually want to take advantage of using atrium. This is just one way you could do it. You could drop your spur over there, but let's just say you want to keep it out of the way and assume that since this is the farthest location from the marines to get to, this is probably the safest location to drop upgrades. So here it is. It's already up. Now I'm going to explain this. In my opinion, and probably many others, the first upgrade you should get is celerity for many, many, many reasons. The reasons are, it being the first upgrade allows for your skulks to move around the map quickly, and early in the game, what do your skulks need to do? They need to be taking down structures. They need to be killing structures. They need to be killing power nodes. Engaging the enemy head on is not the skulks mode in the beginning of the game. They're too easy to kill. It only takes 8 bullets without carapace. You really need to just give them the opportunity to move quickly around the map. So this is a twofold importance for a shift hive. Is one, having shifts as a backup for eggs and spawning, and two, giving your skulks the ability to go around, flank, and take down structures and keep the marines suppressed, prevent them from getting a second base. That is the key start. So at this point, it's going to take a while. You've got some res flow. You may be supporting your players by spawning more eggs, and you may even consider helping out your gorge by getting another spur down. Now this is an optional drop, meaning getting adrenaline because you can get it and you can spend the res immediately to get it. It is an immediate thing that can help out. A gorge will benefit by this by being able to do more heal spray over a longer period of time. Other things you might consider is putting shifts strategically in other places if you have to, in order to help them regenerate energy, as well as, again, putting them in strategic locations like crossroads in order to spawn eggs in crossroads. This is a game winner sometimes. Being able to spawn eggs in crossroads is basically like having a hive in crossroads, and your people end up spawning here and can immediately attack flight control, sub, anywhere. But they can put the pressure by for example, in this case, if they did have two bases, one in flight and one in sub, they could basically flank through here to computer lab and then branch off and do a lot of damage. So shifts are great for a lot of reasons, and it's just one of the bigger ones. Now, let's cover real quick, why would you not choose a Crag and not choose a Shade? Well, it's just a matter of preference. I think a lot of people prefer shift because of celerity. I think a lot of people prefer shift because depending on the map, the size of the maps can be really big. Having celerity is really important in larger maps. This is one of the smaller maps and has a lot more close contact, and from tech point to tech point or hive to base. So you may end up starting here, and the Marines may end up starting here, and you could choose to go Crag hive. But what that would do, or what that could do, is if all these Marines were really good and they started pushing really, really hard in here, they would just take out all your eggs and potentially egg lock you. And if you're egg locked, you're not going to win no matter what upgrade you've got. So that's the downside of it, is by having a shift, you at least have a means to spawn and keep going. Whereas Crag, yeah, you could put up a bigger fight, but that's not the Skulk's role in the beginning. The Skulk's role is more in the beginning of harassment, maybe defense, stealth. So that's my opinion. Crag is great if you really want to have your team. You've got a really strong team and you want to give them that, extra armor so they can do more damage. That's fine, but I think as a safe bet, I would go shift. Now Shade's fun. Shade is really, really fun to drop, I think, as a first hive drop. But in a lot of the games that I've been playing lately, what I found is, and what some people have also reported, is it's great if you are playing newer players. Playing against newer players, you drop a Shade, they have no idea where you're at. You're dropping Shades all over the place. They can't find you. They don't even know if you're there. You have, with a Shade hive first drop, you benefit from the ability to camouflage and to have silence. But if you start with camouflage too, and then you just happen to get a Crag hive next, it's a deadly combination. But the net effect of Shades gets nullified when you have a good comm and a good team, and they scan, or when they drop observation towers all over the place. But that's, in a way, depending on how you play, that is counterbalanced by the fact that they're spending res on observation towers and scans, and you're spending res on Shades. So it's a matter of opinion about where you want to go with what type. I'm finding that the safe bet is pretty much go shift every time. So let's say we've been sitting here for a while and things are going well, and you tell the team, okay, I'm going to drop the second hive in Atrium. Boom. Second hive's going up. They're putting up the big fight. You're holding tight in here. You've got 4 nodes. You might even want to, expand out in the meanwhile. Get another node. Where's the hive at so far? Up. Hey guys, hive's at 80%. Second hive's at 80%. Obviously in explore mode it goes really fast. Okay, we'll drop this. Nodes are going down. Action's happening. Boom. We have, and second that this hive drops, you want to evolve it. Now, you could go Shade, you could go Crag, and you could go Shade. What are you gonna do? Well, here's the thing. In my opinion, Shift and Shade are not necessarily as compatible as Crag is with everybody else. It's like Crag and Shade, awesome. Crag and Shift, awesome. Shade and Shift, not so awesome. Because, you're trying to sneak around a lot with Shade and do sneaky things, whereas having that Shift basically removes your camouflage, etc. So I kind of feel like whatever you do Crag next. It's going to help you. So we're going to do Crag, and that's the very first thing I'll do. As soon as that happens, as soon as that hive drops, the very next thing I'll do is I'll go back to the main hive and start Leap. So after that's all done, and you may actually come in here and do a nutrient mist to try to improve the upgrade times. I'm not absolutely sure what that affects because it's changed over time, but it's supposed to affect upgrades and help in speeding them up. So now your team has leap. They have a crag hive. What's the next thing to do? The next thing to do is get the crag hive upgrades. So we're going to drop a crag here. Crag's going up. And the very first thing you want to do, again, in my opinion, most of the time, you want to give people the option to have Carapace. With Carapace, you at least give more armor to your team when they need it and when they want it, and it's just very effective. They can always go back and heal. Regen, I think, is for a little more advanced players who know what they're doing and know how to back off and heal and maybe use other tactics to try to regenerate. Good things with regen are you can be a lurk and you can have camouflage and you can basically just gas, run, hide, and regenerate. But we're gonna, now that we have 2 hives, we want to keep up on our upgrades. We want to, as fast as we can, as fast as the res will allow us, keep getting our upgrades. Regen is probably the one that you want to get kind of near the end. So what's the next upgrade you want to get? If you can, you're probably going to have to make a decision about getting either spores or blink or bile bomb. Now you're going to see that you see Xenocide and you see Stomp are here present, but this is explore mode and it's as if we have 3 hives anyway. So these should be red. These will be red and not available during either red or gray. I don't remember during a two hive scenario. So we're gonna go ahead and, in my opinion, it's a toss-up. Do you have a player that likes to lurk? If you do, probably go spores. If you have a player that are gonna go blink, that are gonna go fade, you probably want to do this. Most of the time, I'll just go ahead and do blink, and if I have the res, I'll immediately go to the other hive, and I'll do spores. So they're both going. If I have extra res, the next step that I'll do, again, there's probably been a lot of things that have happened up until this point. I'll find a semi-safe position for this guy, and then I'll get regen. And at that point in time, we're only 1 away from getting all of the 2 hive upgrades possible. So we'll wait for this. And bam. You can see that also gives you the button here. I just clicked to get Bile Bomb. So now at this point in time we have all the upgrades possible. You've done your job as a commander to get to this point and help your team get the upgrades they need. If the other things that you have to do as a comm obviously is help direct some of the more important directions. You want to try to take out computer lab in this kind of scenario. You want to harass. You could say, oh, hey, there's a threat marker. Go get them, right? There's a threat here. Go get them. Another threat here. You may be in the process of, oh, they're pushing ventilation. Well, what do? If they're pushing ventilation, use your middle button, or you can use this little guy right here next to the map, a little explanation point, and tell them to get here, go to maintenance access, go to ventilation. I just use the middle button to do that. And that will give them the priority of what you want them to do, or the priority threat. And that's a pretty basic setup for 2 hives. That's where you want to start off. That's where you want to get to that point. Now, you have a lot of choices when you get to where you have 2 hives. You don't need to win with 3. You can win with 2. Now, once you have 2 hives, if you can save for the res, you can actually go pick an egg and convert it to an Onos egg, which anybody can get in, and then they can go do some damage. Now, creating Onos eggs and being smart about it, keeping them paired with gorges, you can make a gorge if you want, keeping those 2 together and putting pressure on can just in itself right there win the game. If you still have a lot going on and your team's not being cohesive and you're having trouble and you just need more, well, what is going to happen if you get a 3rd hive? Well, what's going to happen in this case, in the current situation, is dropping a shade hive, which could be expensive and could take time, is going to, 1, give you more options for when Marines assault. You'll have a backup for another hive. That's one thing it'll do. Two, it's going to give you the ability to drop shades, which will significantly improve your team's ability to be strategic across the map. Having shades down, Marines may not see you. Your team will always be able to camouflage in certain situations. It really, really, really helps out when you have shades on the field. But again, they take res to produce. So, but again, walking through, okay, we got past the 2 hive situation and we need to go for 3 hives. Here we are. We have a shade hive. We're going to go ahead and drop shades over the map. We're going to blanket our hives with shades to help them. You can put more than one if you want. Just put them hopefully where the Marines won't bump into them, and that they have the best coverage. Yeah, now you've got some level of protection that if a Marine walks in here, he won't see the hive right away, and if done correctly, he may not see anything at all and may walk right past and be like, oh, they don't have a second hive yet, or they don't have a third hive yet. So that's the benefit of having the shade hive. It's a good finisher. It really helps out in the end, but you have choices to make it after 2 hives. Those choices are, do you spend your res on Onos eggs or Fade eggs or producing eggs, or do you go for a 3rd hive and start spending res on shades in order to kind of help you out there? Do you spend money on buying more eggs, if you need them? Things like that. So at this point, it's really up to your nerves and your team and your strategic ability to manipulate the game in your favor. And I really can only offer a bit of advice in that arena, and that's if you've got all of these Marines and let's say they're assaulting ventilation, trying to push on data core, and you have 3 hives, you can lose a hive. It's not a big deal. You need to remove the Marines' ability to have a prototype lab by removing their second base. If they have a second base while they're making an assault on another hive, get your team to assault a power node in another room. If it may cause a beacon, awesome. Defensive, offensive, defensive. So keep throwing the Marines off guard. That is the goal at this point in time. Whether you have a 2 hive scenario or a 3 hive scenario, you need to just keep throwing them off. Engaging in massive combat in here or in ventilation with 2 or 3 or 4 skulks is just losing players like candy. It's good to have a Gorge in here to play a little more defensive, having some Hydras to kind of keep the Marines like, I can't stay here. That's actually another really good thing to do. So at this point, I think I've covered all of the important things that I wanted to go over, and I hope that people who are interested in calming will use Explore mode to review some of the things that they can do, some of the upgrades that they can get, what those upgrades are, and how important they are, and pay attention to other commanders winning games and what they do and why and how it affects the team and the gameplay. Thank you.